Suji. So let me divide my talk into three phases. One, the health sector in the pre-COVID time, what's happening in the present time, and what I think the future holds for us. I think most of us know that in the pre-COVID time, the private health sector, the picture was not very rosy. I think we had come to a stage where many hospitals were just about surviving. Uh, I think many of you would have noticed that we had foreign investors coming in, taking a huge stake in private chains. So generally, over the last year, it has not been a good place for investment. Having said that, the 70% of the healthcare in the country is provided by the private sector, and especially in the tertiary healthcare, it actually is about 80%. There's about 50% the beds are shared between the government and private sector. But I think we all are aware that the government sector, though they have beds, the utilization of these beds is just about 50%. And the biggest, single most important reason for this was the shortage of specialists. There's almost an 80% of percentage shortage of specialists across all the states. We're also in a very India is in a very ironic situation. We say there is a shortage of doctors, but at the same time, every year, 50,000 to 100,000 MBBS doctors sit at home studying for their PG entrance. So it's a dichotomy. There's a shortage, but we lose about 100,000 man years of an MBBS person's life a year, every year. Added to that, all of you must have heard about this foreign medical graduates. Many people, students who don't get the opportunity here, go outside and train. And it's close to about 10 to 15,000 of these graduates. These graduates are free to go to the US and UK and pass the PLAB and practice there. But in India, they have to come back, do a NEET exam, and the percentage of pass there is only about 10%. So you have 50,000 MBBS students sitting at home. You have about 10,000 FMG graduates who trained abroad who cannot practice medicine. AHPI, the organization where I represent, we have been actually lobbying with the government to say that this has to increase, the number of seats has to increase, the number of postgraduate seats have to increase, the national board PG seats have to increase. And in fact, in Karnataka, we had a very interesting partnership with the government of Karnataka. We partnered with them and ensured that the district hospitals became training grounds for these postgraduates, and that has come in very handy, especially at this time of COVID. So similarly, we are looking at other areas. HPI's objective is to provide. I served in a mission hospital all my life, and my other colleague in HPI worked with the central government. And in HPI, our objective is to provide affordable, accessible, quality care to the common man. And to achieve this objective, we have been listening with the government. We have been telling them that we need more nurses, we need more doctors, we need more paramedical workers. Unfortunately, just a couple of months before the COVID crisis, the Nursing Council, for reasons of its own, stopped the GNM course. So for those of you who are not aware, we have the GNM and we have the BSc nurses. And most of the smaller hospitals, including the mission hospitals where I worked in, the GNM was the backbone. Now, with this new rule where no more GNM colleges, we only have BSc nurses, and most of them, after 3 years in the country, will go to US or Dubai or other places. Also, in the pre-COVID area, we have something called the Health Sector Skill Council. The government had brought up to increase skilled workforce in the health area. Unfortunately, this also hasn't really taken off. All of us, the Prime Minister introduced the Ayushman Bharat scheme with two very important components: the wellness clinics and the treatment part of it. Unfortunately, this also has not been well received by the private sector because the rates, the reimbursements offered by by the government are far below cost. So just before the COVID pandemic, financial viability of smaller nursing homes were in question. Most of our equipment, medical equipment, much of our drugs were imported from other countries, especially China, and technology wasn't really playing a major part in the healthcare scenario in India. Now, coming to the COVID scenario, I think all of us are aware this came like a bolt from the blue. Fortunately, we were prepared to some extent, having heard the experience of Italy and Spain and France. It really exposed the chinks in our armor. But I must say, to the credit of the government, that they moved fast. They worked closely with the private healthcare sector and taken a lot of measures. So we would be ready that if there is a sudden increase in cases. However, I think the problems are there in plenty. This is a war, and we are sending in the warriors ill prepared, the frontline health workers. Till about a week ago, there were no proper PPEs, that's protective equipment. Testing facilities are still at a very low. So the morale of the health force is at a low, and things are slowly improving. But yes, much can be done. There was one aspect which we need to actually look at: human resources. Because of the lack of PPEs, because of the lack of protection, a significant number of healthcare workers became sick. Many of them were exposed to COVID and they had to go into quarantine. So that became an issue. Fortunately for us, the government and the private sector have started using technology in a big way. We've always said that the primary health centers, the CHCs, are where the health in the country is. And though the wellness clinics of the Ayushman Bharat had been introduced, really no action had been taken. But I think this is an opportunity which has been taken, needs to be taken to strengthen this area. And it's always a balance between the economy and health, and I think that's very important. But I must say that in the last 2 months, the already sick health sector has become even sicker. The last 2 months, there have been no inpatients, not no inpatients, about 20% of the normal crowd. Outpatients had almost come to a stop. No elective surgeries. And these were the things which brought an income to the hospital. So today, when we have our meetings with our HPI chapters regularly, many of our hospitals are in sad shape. And in fact, many hospitals who have training programs say that they are unable to pay the stipends to the students. So we are talking to the government, trying to get a financial bailout, because we do know that this is a temporary crisis. Having said this, our reports from the rest of the country is that in the last 2 days, OPDs in the non-COVID hospitals have been busy, and things are slowly getting back to normal. So I think a big sufferer in this whole pandemic has been the non-COVID diseases. They have been unable to access medical care, and unfortunately, we do know that many people have died, many electives have become emergencies. So this is something that we have constantly been telling the government, and hoping that this will be taken care of. Silver lining: HPI has been fighting for legalizing telemedicine, but 3 years we were not able to make any headway. Fortunately, I think in this situation, we were able to pressurize the government, and telemedicine is now legal. Telemedicine will be an absolute boon to provide access to quality care, and I hope that once this pandemic is over, we will fine-tune this to ensure that quality medical care is available in all the corners of India. All of us know the fear psychosis and the stigma which doctors have and medical personnel have been subject to, and this is something that we need to learn from. Now, coming to the last part of my talk is the future. Where are we, and what do we think will happen to the health sector? As I said, that the recovery from this present pandemic is going to take some time, but it will be very unwise for the government to let private health institutions close, which will not, what has happened if the government doesn't actively take an active role in this. We've already heard that 100 hospitals in the US have been closed. This is in spite of a 75 million package that the government has given to them. So I think government of India has to focus on this to ensure that this doesn't happen. Lessons learned: I think prevention is better than cure, and I think here the government and the private sector should ensure that these wellness clinics succeed. And in these wellness clinics, not only will allopathy, will physical fitness, Ayush system will be greatly beneficial to build up immunity and well-being. And this itself will, if it is fairly well implemented, the prevention and wellness, I think it will bring down our hospital, the corrective health measures, the load on the hospital system by more than 50%. Telemedicine will bring this down, bring the load down. So I think it's important that we focus on that. We need to use technology. I think we made a beginning, and in a big way, technology will ensure that hospital care is affordable and it reaches the far ends of our country. We have to ensure that medical education is less capital intensive. Today, to start a medical course, college costs 400 crores. And I think we can easily cut down on that to ensure that more of our people become doctors, nurses, etc. I think this is a huge opportunity for India. We have the resources, the human resources. We need to train them. The cost of our training can come down significantly. Quality of our medical personnel is well known. So I think not only can we ensure that India gets all the human resources it needs, we can also start looking at providing healthcare personnel to the rest of the world, but maintaining the quality of healthcare, the quality of education, because that will ultimately translate into the quality of healthcare that we provide to our population. Very importantly, and we have HPI has been saying this for a long time now, I think it's a time that the government realized that the onus of healthcare is on the government. 30 years ago, the first place a patient used to go is the government hospital because of the quality. Unfortunately, that has changed. But the government has to ensure that the public hospitals are made, that they deliver quality care. And there are many institutions. NIMHANS is an example, Jaydeva is an example. So we need to strengthen this, starting from the PHC to the CHC to the district hospitals, because this is where actual medicine is practiced. And along with the preventive strategy, I think this is going to make a big difference. So in conclusion, I also want to say that today morning, the papers you must have all seen, US and the UK are taking the easy way out. They are increasing the visas for health workers because they do not have the expertise, and they are taking from our country. So I think we have to take measures. We spend a lot of money on each of our medical graduates. So I think we have to ensure that India trains people so that a similar pandemic in future will be dealt with firmly and quickly without much disruption in the normal activities. So in conclusion, what I'd like to say is, this is a war, and I think the government has realized it. The people have realized this. So the health budget, which is a measly, I think government portion is 1.8%. I think going forward, this will have to go significantly higher, close to our defense budget, because this is a war, a constant war, which we have to keep fighting. But having said that, I think our country, India, is in a position. This is an opportunity, not only to leverage the requirements in other countries, but also to become a developed country and become a nation that is considered strong, and we are a force to reckon with. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Dr. Thomas. This is Shashwati here.
Good evening.
So here's a question. We seem to be living in some kind of a paradoxical situation where, we're all afraid. The fear factor is extremely high. And it's that fear factor that's even preventing us from visiting hospitals or health centers, because we don't know whether we're carrying the infection to the health center or we're going to come back with infection from the health center. So to begin with, in terms of public policy, how do you think we can control this all-pervasive sense of fear? Because any life after lockdown, and if we're trying to rejuvenate the economy, people will have to have the confidence to be able to move out and do what they have to do. And what do you think is the role of the healthcare sector in trying to allay these fears?
Uh, I think we all need to realize that 80% of this COVID infection, 80% of the people who get this infection, it's very mild symptoms. Some of them will not have symptoms. About 15% will need to go to a hospital, and about 5% will end up in the ICUs. So I think this is something that we need to convey to the public. We have been doing it in various forums. I hope the news also focuses on this. Having said that, I think very simple preventive actions. One is wear a mask, two is hygiene, and three is social distancing. I think with these three areas, I think we have to balance it, because at some point, I think it's already happening. More people are dying because of the economic distress rather than the health. So I think life has to go on. We have to take basic precautions and continue with what we are doing. Even in hospitals, things are going to be different. Crowding. Actually, this morning we released a booklet on how hospitals should cope with the resumption of services. So the fear factor is something which is we have to address, and this is something which has to be addressed by the media and society in large.
But then, if you look at the government guidelines, OPDs are non-starters. They have not been allowed to function in most large hospitals. Even in if you look at AIIMS, or you mentioned NIMHANS, so if you look at NIMHANS, if you look at AIIMS, if you look at PGI Chandigarh, among the larger healthcare facilities in the public healthcare space, their OPDs are non-functional. And it's not because they don't want to function, because the government guidelines are preventing them from functioning. So how do you balance this up?
So actually, this was something which came to us early in this pandemic. We learned from Italy and we learned from Spain. So one of the things is that we had to have a separate COVID system. And fortunately, the Union Health Secretary did take our advice. So one of the reasons for this fear is that patients who come to a hospital think that they will be exposed to COVID. So I think government of Karnataka was the first, and this was later taken to all other hospitals. There is a separate COVID system where fever is looked at in spaces outside the hospital. If there is any suspicion of COVID, it either goes into quarantine, isolation, or to a hospital. So leaving the non-COVID hospitals relatively free. Now, with regards to OPD, I think, as I was saying, that yesterday, I think most of the OPDs in the country, this is non-COVID hospitals. I think AIIMS, etc., have become COVID centers, so the regular OPDs are not running. But most of the private health sector OPDs have started functioning since yesterday. And we have given them guidelines as to how to prevent infection of the staff and prevent infection of the patients. I hope that answers your question.
Well, kind of, but then, again, if I look at the sum and substance of what you have said, quite clearly the focus now needs to shift to the public healthcare system. And, we not only need to scale up, we need to equip better, we need to, we need to prepare for a situation, because as you ease the lockdown, there is a belief that there will be a spike in the number of cases. And we have to, move from a lockdown, which was preventive, to a post-lockdown scenario, which probably needs to be more treatment-oriented. Now, if the focus needs to shift on the public healthcare system, then what really happens to the insurance-driven private healthcare system?
No, I was talking about this in the long term. Obviously, it can't be done immediately. So I think, as I said, one of the biggest sufferers in this pandemic has not been the COVID patient, it's been the non-COVID patient, the insurance patients. So we have been in dialogue with insurance. I think the OPD has opened up. Insurance has also agreed to consider telemedicine as a form of consultation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Alexander Thomas. Just one, and some of our students had some questions, and in fact, a lot of those questions have been answered, where the real concern is what happens to non-COVID patients. And today's headline from the Times of India said that Bangalore recorded 30% less deaths in March this year compared to last year. So is this a minor miracle that COVID has worked?
Actually, it's probably more than 30% because just looking at only RTAs, the number of lives lost because of RTAs has reduced significantly. And also, I must say that some of the other conditions, especially in the rural areas, I don't know whether they're being reported, the non-COVID patients. But because everybody is indoors, the death rate has definitely come down. In fact, I was talking to one of our hospitals in Bangalore. So they said after the first time after 2 months, they had an RTA with people drunken driving. It was the first time after a long time. Yeah.
Okay, but that's fascinating. That unintended benefits is that we have effectively saved 30% of lives unintended. And so, thank you very much for your time, Dr. Alexander Thomas. I'm sure we'll be engaging with you in the future. Feel free to stay on. I think there are lots of questions that are coming in the chat window. Let me see if you have a quick minute or two to answer any of these questions. So one of these questions is, what do you see as the main role of public health information campaigns now? This is Devika Rani. What do you think we need to do? Do we need to do something like we did for polio and AIDS, which I think, especially when it comes to the stigma, etc., I think is a very valid question.
Yeah, so I'll put some other questions on communication, and communication is something very close to my heart. So I think our communication, our public health information needs to be strengthened, and we need to put in a system. I think all of you know that there is huge stigma, unfortunately, with this coronavirus. It's similar to what we had in the HIV pandemic. So I think it's important that we communicate. Like I've heard of instances in apartments, because a person went abroad, he was stigmatized, wasn't allowed to leave the house. I think in this situation, society should come together and help each other. So communication and public information play a very important role, and I think the media needs to take it up, because most of the time we hear of negative news. I think they need to reinforce positive news. It's not you don't have to be so afraid. Just take precautions. So I think that's something that has to be reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And going forward, we have to develop a system for this.
Dr. Thomas, one last question, which is, do you think the initiative or leading the charge in the post-lockdown period, should it shift from the government to the scientific community and the healthcare sector?
When you say, you mean private?
Whether it's private or public.
No, because the government.
One of the challenges is that, in public policy making, if the scientific mind is not at work, you can often get it wrong. And somehow, this might be my personal view and I might be totally wrong, but somehow I get the sense that the scientific community, which ought to have a bigger role in dealing with a pandemic like the one that we are dealing with, has probably not got its fair share.
See, that may not be entirely true, because I know the government has reached out both in terms to the scientific community, to the researchers, and to the private healthcare. They're taking all the help that they can get, and I think it's a good partnership. I don't think they're leaving out anybody. They're getting the best brains involved.